She can't hide it, not from you, not from herself. The moment you stand in your truth, her entire emotional system shifts. A woman feels it before she understands it. That quiet, unshakable presence you carry. And even if she tries to conceal her reaction, her instincts betray her. But here's what most men never realize. It isn't your words, your looks, or your charm that change her. It's the one internal truth you hold that alters the way her mind evaluates you. A truth she senses long before she ever admits it. And once you grasp it, you stop chasing validation and start commanding respect without effort. Yet this truth has a darker edge. Because the moment you embody it, you disrupt the pattern she's used to controlling. You break the frame, you shift the power dynamic. And deep inside, she's forced into a psychological recalibration she cannot hide, no matter how composed she pretends to be. If you're a man who's growing into his strength, his calm, and his purpose, consider subscribing and dropping a comment. It helps this message reach more men who are tired of confusion and ready for clarity. Because what you're about to learn goes deeper than attraction. It reveals why her instincts react the way they do, and why your presence, when aligned with this one hidden truth, changes everything. Stay with me, because the insight that rewires the entire dynamic is coming next. There's a moment, so subtle you might miss it, when the atmosphere between you shifts. Not because of anything you've done, but because of what you're no longer doing. You're no longer leaning forward, no longer performing, no longer seeking the small flickers of approval that once dictated your self-worth. And she feels that shift like temperature on skin. You stand there, steady, unhurried, anchored in something deeper than confidence. You don't announce your value, you don't negotiate it, and you don't wait for her reaction to decide how you should feel about yourself. You simply are. This is the point where her breath changes, almost imperceptibly. Her eyes linger half a second longer. Her voice softens without instruction. Her mind begins scanning you with a different kind of attention, a quieter, more instinctive curiosity. Because the truth is this, a woman doesn't respond to the man who tries to impress her. She responds to the man she cannot read. The man whose center doesn't move when she tests him with silence, delays, or emotional storms. The man whose presence feels like a closed book with 1,000 locked pages. Most men reveal themselves too quickly. You do not. Most men rush to fill the quiet. You let the quiet expose her. Most men show their desires immediately. You let her sense them, then question what they mean. And in that space of uncertainty, something ancient wakes in her. A pull she cannot name. A psychological gravity she cannot calculate. It draws her closer while forcing her to confront something she rarely feels with men today. A loss of control. She tries to hide it behind casual glances, behind slow breaths, behind the illusion that she's unaffected. But her instincts are louder than her performance. And the moment she senses that you're the kind of man who doesn't need her reaction to validate his presence, her mind enters a silent, involuntary shift. It's not attraction at first. It's awareness. A sharp, involuntary awareness of a man who carries himself with a kind of internal stillness that cannot be shaken by charm, beauty, or emotional turbulence. The kind of awareness that makes her start noticing the smallest things. The way you look at the world instead of seeking its permission. The way your shoulders don't fold toward others. The way your silence feels deliberate, not empty. She feels this truth about you before she understands it. She reacts to it before she can hide it. And it begins changing her long before you ever speak a word. Because the presence you carry doesn't just influence her, it confronts her. It makes her question the patterns she's used to. It forces her to see you outside the categories she's placed other men in. This is where the story truly begins. Not in what you do to impress her, but in what you stop doing to betray yourself. And the deeper truth, the one that shifts the entire dynamic, waits just beneath this first layer. It's the truth she senses but cannot name, and the truth you're about to understand with clarity. You begin to understand. often long after the moment has already passed. That the way a woman judges you, the way she quietly forms her conclusions about your strength, your emotional maturity, and your hidden depths, rarely happens during the loud, obvious parts of your interaction, but instead in those subtle, easily overlooked pockets of time where she witnesses how you carry yourself when you believe no one is evaluating you. Because a woman's attraction is sculpted not by the image you try to project, but by the truth that leaks through your presence, your restraint, and the energy you emanate without intention. What draws her closer is not the man who speaks the most, gestures the widest, or tries to impress her with emotional intensity, but the man who exists in a kind of quiet psychological gravity, a slow, steady force that hints at a long internal journey, a reservoir of discipline, and a history of battles that carved a deeper, more controlled version of him, creating in her a rising curiosity about the storms you have walked through, the failures you survived, the losses you endured, and the scars you carry that have shaped the way you move through the world without unnecessary noise. Most men never realize that the moment they start pushing, performing, and over-explaining themselves, they break the very spell they are trying to cast, because a woman's subconscious isn't pulled toward performance. It is pulled toward mystery, toward steadiness wrapped in silence, confidence wrapped in humility, strength wrapped in self-control, the kind of psychological structure that cannot be faked, cannot be rushed, and cannot be fabricated with words alone, which is why she becomes so attentive to how you withstand pressure, how you react to challenges, how you regulate your emotional impulses, and how you remain centered even when your thoughts or desires try to pull you off balance. And this is where the contrast begins to separate men without them even noticing. The man who moves with frantic urgency ends up revealing his dependence. The man who needs approval exposes his emptiness. The man who tries too hard to be irresistible ends up showing how deeply he fears being ordinary. Whereas the man who moves with quiet conviction, who is slow to speak, but quick to observe, who does not fight for attention, but naturally commands it through the weight of his presence, becomes the one she finds herself drawn toward without understanding the psychological mechanism pulling her in. It is the difference between the man who is governed by impulse and the man governed by principle. Between the man who collapses into her emotional world and the man who brings her into his. Between the man who treats her interest as a lifeline and the man who treats it as an invitation, never a necessity. Between the man who loses himself in desire and the man who remains whole while experiencing it. And it is in this difference that her subconscious attaches value to you, because her mind associates your internal steadiness with safety, with strength, with direction, and with the rare predictability of a man who is not easily moved by external approval or emotional fluctuations. What keeps her invested, long before she admits attraction to herself, is the way you maintain your emotional center even when her behavior shifts, even when her tone changes, even when she tests the boundaries of your self-respect. Because women instinctively test not to destroy a man's confidence, but to verify its foundation, to see if your calm is genuine or fragile, if your restraint is real or merely a performance, if your interest is grounded or desperate, and whether you can maintain the same emotional temperature when faced with vulnerability, uncertainty, or tension. And when she senses that your silence is not emptiness, but discipline, that your slowness is not hesitation, but intention, that your distance is not avoidance, but self-governance, she begins to experience a form of psychological tension that is deeply attractive to her, a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and longing, because your refusal to reveal everything too soon creates an internal space where her imagination begins to work harder than your words ever could, painting a picture of your depth, your unspoken strength, and the mystery she wants to unravel piece by piece. The truth you're approaching, the truth most men never learn, is that a woman does not fall for the man who tries to convince her of his worth. She falls for the man whose worth is felt without explanation, whose presence shifts her internal state, whose energy makes her slow down, breathe differently, and pay closer attention. because something in him suggests a path she has not walked before, a steadiness she has not experienced, a level of masculine composure that forces her to reevaluate not just you, but herself in relation to you. Stay with this, because in the next part, you'll see how this internal dynamic, the way your psychological state becomes her emotional experience, determines not only her attraction, but her respect, her loyalty, her perception of your value, and the entire trajectory of how she treats you. And once you understand this mechanism, you won't just interact with women differently. You will carry yourself differently in every room you walk into, because you will finally understand the power of a man who is both deeply aware of his emotions and entirely ungoverned by them. And now, after observing the subtle shifts, the instinctual recalibrations, and the quiet attention she cannot hide, you begin to realize the depth of what your presence actually communicates. Because every movement, every pause, every unspoken boundary carries a psychological weight that she registers before she ever thinks to name it. And in that weight lies the ultimate truth, that a man who is grounded in his own principle and unwavering in his internal compass not only commands respect, but also forces the mind of a woman to reorient around him, not through persuasion, manipulation, or charm, but through a kind of silent authority that is felt, absorbed, and internalized without effort, which is why the most profound forms of influence are invisible, operating beneath awareness, quietly bending perception without a single overt gesture. You notice the way her posture subtly adapts when you enter a room, how her gaze lingers fractionally longer than intended, how her voice, even in casual conversation, unconsciously aligns to your rhythm, as though your composure becomes the measure against which she calibrates her own. Because the truth of attraction and respect is rarely about words or appearance, but about the way a man inhabits his own space, the gravity he carries, and the way his internal alignment resonates outward until it shapes the emotional atmosphere around him, causing others, particularly women, to adjust instinctively, testing, observing, and in some cases, unconsciously yielding. There is an unspoken contract forming in these moments, one that does not require negotiation or explanation. And it is here that you see the stark contrast between ordinary men who chase approval and bend under pressure, and the composed, disciplined man who stands as an axis in a chaotic world, absorbing external fluctuations without breaking, who allows tension to exist without fleeing it, who lets silence carry meaning, who lets presence become a signal stronger than any word, stronger than any compliment, stronger than any visible action. And it is this signal that awakens her curiosity, her respect, and a subtle recalibration of her instincts in ways she cannot fully articulate to herself or anyone else. You begin to understand that attraction, true attraction, is less about what you give and more about what you withhold. Not in a manipulative sense, but in the sense that a man who does not chase, who does not over-explain, and who does not rely on validation inherently elevates his own value in her mind. Because she measures not what is performed, but what is lived, not what is claimed, but what is inherently present. And the quiet confidence of a man rooted in principle becomes a mirror, against which she involuntarily tests her own internal equilibrium, forcing her to confront desires, curiosities, and emotions she is accustomed to keeping unconscious, all without a single overt demonstration of power. And when you see this, when you internalize that your emotional integrity and self-possession act as instruments of unseen influence, you begin to recognize a larger truth, that the world, the women you encounter, and the people who claim authority over you all respond to the depth of your own alignment rather than the volume of your actions. And in mastering this, you step into the rare territory where your value is not contingent on approval, attraction, or outcome, but on the silent, undeniable fact of your presence, your discipline, and your emotional sovereignty. And it is in this space that true power exists. Not the power that is shouted or flaunted, but the power that is absorbed by others instinctively, shaping their perception before a single word is spoken. You notice that ordinary men attempt to fill the space with words, gestures, and activity, and while they may temporarily capture attention, They lack the gravitational consistency that makes her attention linger. The disciplined man, however, allows the space itself to speak, to breathe, to form tension that is felt. And in that tension she begins to question, to wonder, to recalibrate her own instincts, to test herself against the stillness she senses but cannot name. And it is precisely this subtle orchestration of presence, rather than manipulation, that rewires the dynamics of attraction and respect in ways both visible and invisible, conscious and subconscious, immediate and long-lasting. And now you see the pattern, the principle unfolding through lived behavior rather than abstract teaching, that your internal alignment, the way you regulate your own energy and the depth of your composure, serve as a force field around which others, particularly women, adjust themselves, not because they are compelled by words, but because the world senses stability, gravitas, and unshakable purpose. And the moment you embody this truth fully, her instincts cannot help but respond. Her curiosity is piqued, her perception shifts, and what once might have required effort or persuasion now occurs naturally, inevitably, and with profound psychological resonance. You realize then that the ultimate mastery is not in the strategies you deploy, the tricks you execute, or the calculated behaviors you adopt, but in the quiet cultivation of self-sovereignty, in the unwavering fidelity to your own principles, and in the deliberate inhabitation of your internal world in a way that is visible to her only through the subtle ripple effects of presence, posture, and emotional clarity, creating a cinematic psychological experience in which she cannot fully hide her reactions, and in which the one truth about you, the truth she senses instinctively, alters her perception in a way that no manipulation could replicate. And it is precisely in this alignment that transformation occurs for both of you. And so, by the time the interaction reaches its natural cadence, by the time her mind has subconsciously scanned, measured, and reevaluated, she has felt the impact of your composure, your presence, and the unspoken truth you carry. And she cannot ignore it. She cannot rationalize it away. And she cannot reverse the shift you have catalyzed. It exists now as a subtle gravitational force in her awareness, shaping her thoughts, her instincts, and the way she relates to you, as a reflection of the internal power and emotional sovereignty you have chosen to inhabit, fully and without compromise, demonstrating that true influence over the human psyche is less about what is said or done, and more about who you are when nothing demands your attention, when no one is watching, and when the quiet truth of your alignment radiates without effort, commanding respect, intrigue, and attraction with the unassailable authority of presence itself. And in this final truth, you find both conclusion and promise, that the presence you cultivate, the calm you maintain, the internal truths you embody, and the subtle gravitational influence you exert are not just tactics for attraction. They are principles of mastery, of masculine authority, and of emotional sovereignty, which when fully realized, create transformation not only in her perception, but in your own identity, leaving you with elevated clarity, undeniable confidence, and the kind of psychological power that does not shout, but whispers, moves, and reshapes the world simply through your unwavering presence. And it is this power, lived rather than taught, that will remain long after words are forgotten, decisions are made, and interactions conclude, leaving both of you irrevocably changed.